There were exactly 3 olives on the floor. I remember because I was staring at them when the glass shattered behind me. A martini glass, I think. Maybe hers. Maybe mine. Maybe it didn't matter anymore. The music kept playing, obnoxiously cheerful, like nothing had just imploded in the center of that rooftop. People turned. Not fast, slow, hesitant. Like they didn't want to get involved, but also didn't want to miss whatever scene was unfolding. I didn't move. My hand was still frozen midair, holding a crumpled napkin I never got the chance to give her. I'd folded it twice, written 4 words on it in blue ink. Stupid words. Pathetic, probably. But I'd rehearsed that moment in my head like it was a movie. I was going to walk up, tap her shoulder, hand her the napkin, and wait for her reaction like a child waiting for applause after a school play. Instead, I just stood there, watching her laugh. With him. It wasn't a polite laugh. It wasn't the kind you give your coworker when they say something mildly offensive and you're too polite to scold them. It was real. Her head tilted, her hand touched his arm, and her eyes crinkled at the corners like they hadn't in years. Not around me, at least. She didn't see me yet. Not at first. I watched her brush invisible lint off his blazer. I watched him pretend to flinch, then laugh like they'd done this 100 times before. Like they were rehearsing something they'd long since perfected. And then, she turned, and she froze. Her smile didn't just fade, it collapsed. And I realized that the napkin in my hand was soaked. I must have been squeezing it too hard. Or maybe the condensation from my untouched drink had bled through. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe the whole moment was never supposed to happen. But there I was, standing, holding 4 useless words. As she blinked at me like I was a ghost from a life she'd already buried. I should have walked away the moment she looked at me like that, like I was some glitch in the Matrix, a crack in her carefully designed version of reality. But I didn't. I stood there, pathetic, with that soggy napkin in my hand, and my heart doing that thing where it tries to crawl up your throat because it knows something terrible is about to happen. She didn't move. Neither did he. In fact, the guy barely acknowledged me at all. Just glanced over, then looked back at her like he was waiting for her cue. Like he knew what I didn't. That this was already over. And still, I didn't say a word. Not because I was noble. Not because I was giving her space. I didn't speak because I had no idea what version of her I was looking at anymore. The woman I knew would have rushed over, wrapped her arms around me, made an awkward joke to kill the tension. But this woman looked like someone who had just been caught stealing something that didn't technically belong to her. That was when she finally spoke. Quiet. Calculated. Like every syllable was being weighed against how it might sound to everyone watching. I didn't know you were coming. That was it. No, hi. No, you look nice. Not even a damn question. Just a statement of unexpected inconvenience. As if my presence had ruined something delicate and choreographed. My fingers tightened around the napkin, and I think part of me wanted to throw it. Not at her, not at him, just into the sky, like maybe the wind could carry those 4 stupid words far away from this place. I still choose you. That's what I wrote. Idiot. She reached for my hand. Reflex. But I stepped back before she could touch me. And that, apparently, was enough to trigger a shift in the energy around us. Suddenly her coworker, or whoever he really was, chuckled under his breath and turned away, muttering something about needing to check on the drinks. He walked off like a man who'd just watched a bomb drop and didn't feel like sticking around for the fallout. And now it was just us, surrounded by strangers. Music too loud. Conversations blurring into white noise. My pulse louder than all of it. I was going to text you, she said, almost pleading. It's just, the night got busy. I wanted to scream. Not because she was lying, but because she wasn't even trying to make the lie believable. Busy? You were busy laughing, Madison. Busy flirting. Busy touching his sleeve like it was silk spun by angels. Busy showing a version of you that I haven't seen in years. I looked down at the napkin again, at the blue ink bleeding into the fibers like regret soaking through skin. My mouth finally opened, but what came out wasn't what I expected. You didn't know I was coming, I said. And yet, you looked terrified that I did. Her face twitched. Not in guilt. Not in shame. In calculation. Like she was already preparing the next scene. But I wasn't going to let her write the script anymore. And that's when I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the small black box I hadn't touched in 3 months, and set it on the table between us, right where her cocktail had been. She stared at it like it was radioactive. Happy 6 years, I whispered, and then I turned my back. I didn't even hear the box open. But I did hear her voice crack as she called after me. And I didn't stop walking. Not yet. I didn't make it far before the adrenaline began to rot into something slower, thicker, like tar in my chest. I made it to the hallway just off the rooftop terrace, where dim lights flickered above an empty coat rack and a mirror someone had carelessly leaned against the wall. I stared at it for a moment. God, I looked awful. The blazer was wrinkled. My shirt had bunched up where I'd been clenching my fists. My face was flushed, not from alcohol, but from that distinct heat that only humiliation brings. I looked like a man who had just handed his wife a ring box like some sad prop in a scene she never asked to be in. I gripped the edge of the mirror and exhaled slowly, trying to swallow the nausea. And then I saw her reflection. Madison, standing just behind me, not saying anything. She was barefoot, had kicked off her heels, I guess, and holding the box in her hand. It was open. The ring inside caught the light in a way that almost made me forget she hadn't worn it in months. Not since our last real argument. Not since I accused her of slipping away, and she accused me of dragging her down with my constant doubts and sad little routines. Maybe we were both right. I didn't think you still had this, she said quietly, not looking at me. Her eyes were fixed on the ring like it was a museum artifact from a marriage that once had meaning. I didn't think you still cared, I said. She blinked hard, once, twice, then set the box down gently on a side table next to a stack of unused drink menus. This isn't how I wanted tonight to go, she whispered. I turned to face her. Then how did you want it to go, Madison? Was he going to walk you home? Stay over? Or were you just testing how far you could take it before I noticed? Her jaw clenched, and I saw something flicker in her. Not remorse, not even anger, something colder. Like she had been preparing for this moment longer than I had realized. You don't understand, she said, almost too calmly. It's not about him. It's about everything else. Everything we've become. You sit at home every night refreshing tech blogs while I'm out here trying to feel alive. Do you know how exhausting it is to come home to silence? The words hit harder than I expected. Because they weren't a confession. They were a eulogy. But before I could respond, a voice cut through the hallway. Not hers. Not mine. His. Everything okay? The man from earlier asked as he stepped into view, casual, composed, like he belonged in this story. I turned slowly. My hands were shaking, and I hated it. He had no right to look that calm. No right to speak like this was just a minor interruption in whatever fantasy he'd built with my wife in my absence. Madison didn't look at him. Didn't answer. She just stared at me. I think she was waiting for me to speak first. To lose it. To make a scene so she wouldn't have to feel guilty for what came next. But I didn't give her that luxury. Instead, I smiled, a sharp, bitter kind of smile, and said, yeah, everything's perfect. Just clearing out the past so you two can keep playing in the ruins. I walked past him, and for the first time that night, he didn't look so sure of himself. I don't remember getting in the elevator. I remember the sound of the doors sliding shut behind me. I remember the way the air felt. Thick, like I was trapped inside someone else's lungs. I remember pressing the ground floor button with more force than necessary, like breaking the panel might somehow fix everything else in my life. And then, just before the doors closed, something stopped them. A hand. Her hand. She slipped inside without a word, heels back on now, face unreadable. The ring box was still in her hand, still open, still glowing under the elevator lights like it wanted to humiliate me one last time. She didn't look at me, and I didn't look at her. We stood on opposite ends of a space barely 6 feet wide, surrounded by polished steel and the ghost of everything we never said. The doors finally shut. The descent was quiet for exactly 6 seconds. Then she spoke. You weren't supposed to bring it. I stared straight ahead. And yet I did. She turned to me, voice lower now. What did you think would happen, Leaf? That I'd see it, and suddenly remember how magical we were? That I'd melt in front of my coworkers and fall into your arms? That's not how this works. No, I said. I just thought. Maybe you'd stop pretending I was the problem. That caught her. For the first time, she hesitated. And then she did something I wasn't prepared for. She reached into the box and pulled out something else. Beneath the ring, which I thought was all it contained, was a folded piece of paper. I had forgotten about it entirely. I had tucked it there months ago, in some foggy burst of desperation, back when I still believed that a grand gesture could resurrect a dying heart. She opened it slowly, like it might bite her. As she read, I watched her eyes, not the way I used to when I was in love, but the way you'd watch someone crack open a time capsule you weren't sure you had the right to see. She finished reading, folded it again, and then, softly, almost absently, "You wrote this before the anniversary trip." I nodded. "The trip we never took." She held the paper in both hands for a moment, then slid it back into the box, closed it, and finally looked me in the eye. "You were always better at writing things down than saying them. That's because when I speak, you talk over me." She flinched, just barely, then said, "You made yourself invisible long before I did." And that's when the elevator stopped. But the doors didn't open. We looked at the floor display. Lobby. But the lights blinked, flickered, stayed shut. A mechanical groan. Then silence. Madison pressed the door open button. Nothing. Of course. Of course we'd get stuck now. In this stupid tin box of a metaphor, trapped between the floors of what we were and whatever came next. I leaned back against the mirror. She leaned forward, pressing every button she could. When that failed, she stepped back and stared at her own reflection, almost like she didn't recognize herself anymore. Neither did I. And then she said it. I wasn't sleeping with him. Not a confession. A preemptive defense. And I think that was the moment I knew. The truth was going to be so much worse. The air in that elevator was going stale fast. Not just because of the mechanical failure or the fact that we were likely breathing the same exhausted loop of recycled oxygen, but because of what she'd just said. I wasn't sleeping with him. She didn't look at me when she said it. Just stared at the buttons like one of them might reveal a hidden escape hatch. I didn't answer right away. I just let the words hang there, weightless but heavy, spinning in the air like cigarette smoke in a locked room. Finally, I laughed, just once, sharp and short. "That's not the victory you think it is." She turned slowly, arms crossed now, defensive. "You don't believe me. That's not the point." "Then what is the point? That you had to say it at all." She flinched like I'd slapped her. I took a step closer, not to intimidate her, just because I didn't want to keep shouting across emotional miles anymore. I wanted to see her, really see her, for who she was now. Not the girl I married. Not the woman I lost. But the person standing here in front of me with flawless makeup and exhausted eyes. "Do you love him?" I asked. She didn't respond. That was answer enough. But then she sighed, a slow exhale through her nose, like she was trying to push the weight of the entire night out of her body. "No," she finally said. "It's not about him. It never was." I waited. "I didn't want more him," she continued. "I just wanted less you." It was such a precise kind of cruelty that for a second, I genuinely thought I'd misheard her. "I wanted silence," she said, softer now. "I wanted to walk into a room and not feel you sucking all the air out with your sadness. I wanted to laugh without hearing your sigh from the other side of the couch. I wanted to wear something tight without seeing your eyes flicker down and then away like you were ashamed of me and yourself at the same time. You didn't cheat on me with a person, Leaf. You cheated on me with your own misery. You let it crawl into bed with us. You fed it, nurtured it, let it grow until I didn't know who I was anymore." Her voice cracked near the end. Not from guilt, from release. And I think I finally understood. Not condoned, not accepted, but understood. She hadn't wanted someone else. She had just wanted out. "Then why didn't you just leave?" I asked, my voice barely audible. She looked up at the ceiling, blinking hard. "Because I didn't want to be the villain." Silence again. Just the low mechanical hum behind the walls and our pulses trying to find rhythm inside a story that had long lost its beat. "Was it all fake?" I asked. "All the years?" "No," she whispered. "That's what makes it worse." The emergency intercom crackled then. A voice came through, distant and garbled, letting us know a technician was on the way. 15 minutes, maybe 20. Neither of us acknowledged it. I sat down on the floor, back against the cold metal wall. Madison stayed standing. Then, after a long pause, she said something that made my chest tighten in a new, unfamiliar way. "He was never going to stay the night." I looked up. "What?" "The guy on the rooftop. His name's Roman. He's married. 2 kids. This wasn't a love story, Leaf. It was barely even a story. It was a pocket of air I crawled into to feel light again. I told myself I deserved it because I stayed." She lowered herself slowly to the floor, sitting across from me now. Legs folded, hands in her lap. For a moment, we looked like we were having a casual talk in a therapist's waiting room. Strangers with shared history and no roadmap forward. "I didn't want you to catch me," she said. "But part of me needed you to." And that's when something broke inside me. Not from rage, not from betrayal, but from the sheer exhaustion of pretending like I was still trying to fix something that had already collapsed in slow motion. The worst part? I still wanted her to reach for my hand. And I hated myself for it. The technician was still 20 minutes out. That's what they said. But they always say that, don't they? Whether it's elevators or marriages, you're always told, just hang in there. Help is on the way. Meanwhile, you're stuck. Alone. Trapped with your ghosts and your guilt and your bitter little truths. Madison had gone quiet again. That terrifying kind of quiet where you don't know if she's about to cry, confess something, or ask you what you want for dinner like none of this ever happened. I sat with my back against one side of the elevator. She sat against the other. It looked like a breakup stage for theater, too symmetrical to be real. Our knees almost touched. Almost. She ran her fingers over the edges of the ring box, now resting beside her on the floor. She wasn't opening it, just holding it like it contained something radioactive. I wanted to tell her she didn't have the right to hold it anymore, but I didn't. Truth is, I didn't even want the thing back. I wanted answers, but I wasn't prepared for the one she gave me. There's something you don't know, she said suddenly. Her voice was calm, steady, not shaking like before. That scared me more than anything. People only speak like that when they've rehearsed it. I figured. I muttered, not even sure I wanted her to continue. She didn't wait for permission. It wasn't the first time. My heart didn't sink. It stopped, just for a moment, like it needed time to process the sentence before it decided how to break. I looked up at her slowly. What? That guy? Roman. The party. The flirting. That's not new. That's just the first time you saw it. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream, curse, shake the walls of the elevator until someone pulled me out of this nightmare. But I didn't. Instead, my voice came out cold, small, mechanical. How many? She shrugged. That shrug. I've never hated anything more. It wasn't cruel. It was exhausted. Like she had been waiting for this confrontation for so long she no longer cared how it played out. I don't know. Maybe 3. Maybe 5. I didn't count. They weren't serious. Oh, well, that's a relief. I snapped, my voice finally cracking. Just a handful of random strangers you used to forget I exist. No big deal. She didn't flinch. I didn't do it to hurt you. That's the part you never understood. I hissed. It hurt anyway. There was a long pause. Then she looked up at me. Really looked, like maybe she finally saw something worth addressing. I buried it, she said. I blinked. What? She leaned her head back against the cold wall and closed her eyes. That version of me that loved you. That version that used to race home just to tell you about my day. The version that laughed with you over dumb movies and fought with you over the dishes, but still fell asleep tangled in your arms. I buried her. My throat tightened. I didn't want to, she added. But I kept waiting for you to notice she was dying, and you never did. You just kept coming home quieter. Sadder. You stopped asking me to go for drives. Stopped picking up my favorite snacks. Stopped noticing when I was wearing something new. So I stopped waiting. I dug a hole in my heart, and I buried her there. I felt like I was suffocating. You're blaming me for your affairs? I asked, stunned. She shook her head. I'm blaming us both for the silence that came first. And in that moment, I didn't know what was worse. The fact that she had cheated on me, or the fact that part of me believed her. That we both built the coffin. That she just happened to be the one who lowered it into the ground. I want a divorce, I said, the words tumbling out before I could second-guess them. She nodded. No tears. No begging. No denial. Just a nod. Like she'd already made peace with that possibility months ago. And then, for reasons I still don't understand, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive. She slid it across the floor toward me. What is this? I asked. Something I was going to delete. I didn't pick it up. Just stared at it. A tiny, ordinary piece of plastic and metal, now suddenly radioactive. What's on it? She exhaled. Not a sigh. A confession. Proof. And then the elevator jolted. The doors creaked. And slowly, they started to open. The elevator doors opened slowly, almost reluctantly, like even they weren't sure if it was a good idea to let us out. The hallway outside was bright, sterile, humming with that fake modern hotel ambience, scent diffusers, expensive lighting, and silence pretending to be comfort. But the silence inside me was worse. I didn't look at Madison as I stepped out. I didn't say a word. I held the USB drive like it was burning a hole through my palm. She followed behind, but not too close, Like we both instinctively knew the boundary line had been drawn in that elevator, and we were no longer a couple, just two people walking through the same disaster. I didn't go home. I went to my brother's apartment. He was out of town for the week, left me a spare key in the ceramic frog by his door, still the most emotionally available relationship in my life. I poured myself a drink I didn't want and sat on his couch, staring at the USB drive on the coffee table for nearly an hour. I didn't even know why I was hesitating. If she wanted to bury a version of herself, this was her tombstone. I had to look. I had to know. I plugged it into his laptop. It contained a single folder. Inside, for video files, one text document. The text file was titled, "Before You Decide Anything." I opened it first. It was short. Just 3 lines. "You think I'm a liar. You think you know what I've done. Watch these before you decide what to burn." That was it. No signature. No explanation. No manipulation. Just cold, calculated instruction. I clicked the first video. The footage was grainy, from a phone or security cam. It was a rooftop bar. Not the one from the party, but a different one. I saw Madison, sitting alone, her phone in one hand, cocktail in the other. A man approached her, not Roman. Someone else. Tall, blonde, with the kind of smile that wasn't practiced, just dangerous. He leaned in too close. She leaned back. He kept pressing, touching her hair, her shoulder. She wasn't flirting. She was enduring. The video ended. The second was shot indoors. Another event. Same man. Madison was standing with coworkers. He slipped something into her drink. It was subtle, disgustingly practiced. No one noticed. Except her. She didn't drink it. Instead, she confronted him. Quietly. Firmly. In the kind of tone women have to perfect just to survive the night without escalation. The third video was audio only. A voicemail she left for someone. I couldn't tell who. She was crying. Whispering. Begging whoever it was to please stop showing up at my work and to leave my husband out of this. And then the fourth video. It was her. Direct to camera. No makeup. Hair pulled back. Eyes swollen. "I didn't cheat on you with him," she said, voice low. "I let you believe it because the alternative was worse. Because admitting what was really happening would have made you blame yourself, and I couldn't risk that. You'd spiral. You always do. And I was already holding us both above water." I paused the video. My hands were shaking. What was she saying? I resumed. "I lied to you because I thought it would end faster if I played the part. I thought if I flirted back just enough, he'd lose interest. But he didn't. And I was stupid enough to think I could handle it without dragging you into it. Until tonight." She looked away from the camera for a moment, took a breath, then turned back. "The USB was my last card. My backup plan. In case things went too far. You were never supposed to see this." The screen went black. I stared at the laptop, stunned. No affair. No grand betrayal. Not the way I thought, anyway. Something worse had happened. She had let herself become a shield. Let herself take the blame. Because she thought it would protect me. Because she thought I couldn't handle the truth. Because she didn't believe I was strong enough to stand next to her while she fought off a man who wouldn't take no for an answer. And maybe she was right. Maybe I really wasn't. Because the first thing I felt wasn't relief. It was shame. For everything I'd said. For everything I thought I knew. I closed the laptop and sat there in the dark, the blue glow fading from the screen, the weight of all my assumptions crushing down on my chest like a slow collapse. She hadn't betrayed me, but I had betrayed her in the way I saw her. And somehow, that felt so much worse. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the sun come up from my brother's living room window, the light creeping across the hardwood floor like it didn't want to wake me. The videos kept replaying in my mind. Not just what she said, but how she said it. The trembling in her voice. The rawness behind her eyes. I couldn't stop thinking about how easy it had been to paint her as the villain. About how fast I'd picked up the brush. By mid-morning, I knew what I had to do. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I went home. Our apartment was quiet. The door wasn't locked. She was in the kitchen, sitting at the counter, still wearing last night's dress and no shoes. Her heels were neatly placed by the door, as if she thought she might leave quickly. I stood there for a moment, watching her stare at nothing. There was a silver balloon outside the window, still tangled in the tree, still flickering in the wind. She looked up when she heard the door close behind me. We didn't speak at first. She just watched me like I might vanish if she blinked. And I just breathed. Then finally, I said, "You should have told me." She nodded. "I know. You thought I couldn't handle it." I wasn't sure if I could, she said quietly. I walked to the counter and sat across from her. I watched everything, I said. All of it. I figured, she whispered. There was a pause. Then, something changed in her face, subtle, but real. Relief. Not joy. Not hope. But the kind of breath someone finally lets go of after holding it for months. I wanted to hate you, I said. For lying. For hiding it. For letting me believe something you knew would hurt me. You had every right. But I don't, I said. Not anymore. Because I think, deep down, I always knew something was off. And I didn't ask. I just assumed. I let the story I wrote in my head become more real than the person sitting across from me. She looked like she was going to cry, but she didn't. I reached across the counter and placed my hand over hers. It didn't feel like forgiveness. Not yet. But it felt like a beginning. I don't know what happens next, I said. I don't know if we go to therapy, or take space, or just sit in silence for a while. But I do know this. I don't want to bury anything else. Not the truth. Not us. She turned her hand over slowly and laced her fingers through mine. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a stranger in my own story. Later that day, we sat on the couch, still in last night's clothes, a blanket thrown over us like a shield. She dozed off on my shoulder. I didn't move. Outside, the wind finally shook the silver balloon loose. It floated upward, free at last. And so were we. Not perfect, but finally, free.